Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Chats with Chels podcast. I am your host, Chelsea Miller, and today I am coming at you live on a Monday. I got to the end of my day yesterday, which would have been Sunday, and it's normally the day that I post, but I just didn't have the bandwidth to sit here and talk to you about my week because I just got to the end of my day and I wanted to chill out. So here I am on a Monday talking to you. And I wanted to use this episode to give you an update of week 6, check in with how I'm feeling mentally, and my plans for week 7. I am kind of in a lull this week, and some might call it an avoidance of responsibility. Other people would say I'm taking a chance to decompress after my exam week. And I think both of those things are true. I didn't really have much homework due the week following my exams, which was really nice because I just got to take my brain out of exam mode and just kind of settle back in. In my stats class, we aren't really going over anything super new. It's just kind of a repeat of something that we had learned the week leading up to our exam. Just instead of one sample, we're now dealing with 2 samples. So I feel in terms of like the concept that I'm more confident, and we'll see once the homework comes out because I'm pretty sure we're going to have homework this week. That was another thing that changed was following the exam in my stats class, we didn't have any homework due. And so technically the only homework that I had was from my nutrition class. And I have mixed feelings about that exam, but we moved quickly from carbohydrates to now lipids, and he dove right in. So I'm trying to now acclimate myself to the idea of lipid metabolism, and I'm less familiar with lipids than I am with carbohydrates just because in previous nutrition classes, I think there was just a larger emphasis on carbohydrates and not lipids. So that's been throwing me for a loop because there's a lot of new terminology and I'm not really sure how to make sense of it all yet. I did submit my first lipid homework assignment on Friday, and that whole week I was just kind of like, oh, there's no homework due. I can do whatever I want. And so I didn't really make a lot of progress in my classes, and I did some minimal reading for my lab project. And I kind of just did a lot of Netflix watching. And then over the weekend, I went to the gym. I always go to the gym. That's something that I actually want to use an episode coming soon to talk to you guys about because weightlifting is a huge part of my lifestyle. Teaching yoga is a huge part of my lifestyle, and part of the reason why I, rebranded this YouTube channel was to encompass more aspects of my life than just publishing yoga videos. Because to be fully transparent, I'm not very good at that. The editing process takes a long time, and I'm recruiting my husband to help me edit some of the videos, but I don't really have like a plan of action. So it's easier for me to sit here in like a longer form conversation than it is to plan ideas for videos or to film an additional yoga class on top of the ones that I'm already teaching in a day or in a week. So I'm really excited to, keep doing these podcasts because it helps me, navigate my mental space, but also let you know what's going on. Because I really do like talking about experience and hearing other people's experiences. And I think the more of these podcast episodes that I publish, the more comfortable people will be with reaching out to me. Because it's been very minimal contact lately. I don't really get a lot of interaction in terms of questions like I was hoping for, but here's a plug. Ask me questions so that I can answer them at the end of these episodes. But anyway, I got off on a side tangent, but I am going to start putting up more videos that is more telling of my whole self instead of just these PhD updates. Because while the PhD updates are really helpful and really interesting, at least to me, there's a lot more to me than just my PhD program. And I think that that emphasis gets lost in people who commit to this PhD. They give so much time to it and they kind of lose themselves in the process. And I am part of a new generation of scientists, and I don't think that that's the only way to be successful in the research space or in the academic space. So this is my opportunity to enforce a habit that I've already been building and maybe show other people that it's possible to have a life outside of the lab, because that's the goal. And that was one of the reasons why I chose the lab that I chose at CSU, because the people here just seem to have a lot stronger of a foundation in work-life balance, and they actually practice it, and it's really reassuring. So I don't know how I got off on that tangent about videos other than this podcast, but that's something that's coming. And I wanted to start filming at the gym. I think this is where I was going with this. I wanted to start filming at the gym, so I actually grew a pair of balls and took my tripod to the gym for the first time, and it was really awkward to me. But I went at a time where it wasn't very busy, and I think I filmed this on Saturday and made a reel about it. So that was kind of fun. And I did a lot of gym going this week. I didn't go to yoga, but I taught yoga twice. And then on Sunday, I went to the gym, and it was a very chaotic morning because I wanted to get up and actually film this podcast first before I did anything, but I just didn't wake up in time. So I went to the gym, and then I actually had a posing session with my posing coach, and that's something that I'll talk about a little bit later. But it was a really great half-hour session. She worked me, and I will go into detail on like what that means, but to give a Cliff's Notes version, there was a lot of abdominal constriction during that entire half-hour period, and I definitely know that I need to work on my core strength. But that's the purpose of these posing sessions, is to practice and get better. So I did that, and then I had another appointment after that, and then I actually had one of my friends reach out to me and ask if I could go on a hike. And we ended up going up to Horsetooth Reservoir, and it was a really great time. But All Trails is all lies out here in Northern Colorado. I have never had so many hikes be so incorrect with mileage on there, because in San Diego, it's pretty accurate, like down to 0.1 of a mile. That's like the only fluctuation that I notice. But out here, when All Trails tells you that you're going on a 3-mile hike, anticipate going on a 5-mile hike. And that's exactly what happened. I don't know what got lost in translation or who is actually determining these distances, but it's very incorrect. So I went on this hike, and I kind of had a feeling that it was going to be off, because every single hike that I've done since I moved here has been wildly off. So we were out there, and I told her there was a high likelihood that I was just going to have to go straight from the hike to teach my yoga class. And that is what ended up happening. We had a great time on the hike, but I didn't have enough time to go home. And thankfully, hiking clothes also equal yoga teaching clothes. So I finished the hike, and then I had to teach at 4:45. And I love my class on Sunday evenings, but once the day gets away from me, it's kind of hard to catch up. So that's why I ended up filming this podcast today, the day after, because I just didn't have enough sunlight or energy once I was done teaching my class to sit down and talk to you guys. So I don't know. This week has been really chill. And I don't know if it's one of those things where I'm just avoiding responsibility. That's what I was saying to some of my classmates today, is that I'm just avoiding responsibility because I haven't really done much, but there wasn't really much to do. So I was feeling really grateful about that. And, I got my homework assignment for my nutrition class turned in on time, which was like a first in many weeks, because those homework assignments now are like 30 to 40 short answer / paragraph response. And it just takes a lot of time to fill out the answer. And while my professor isn't grading us on correctness or accuracy, he is grading us on completion. So it was really important to me to get all of those questions done and answered before the submission date, because I just hate seeing that little red late bar on Canvas. It's like the least satisfying thing. So if I can avoid that, I will at all costs. I also, oh my God, this is like the biggest part of my week. Okay, so on Friday, my lab mate and friend, Kate, has successfully defended her dissertation, and she's now Dr. Clark. And I had the pleasure of watching her defense presentation on Friday, and we had a little celebration afterwards, and it was just a really cool experience to see her put together a presentation that described the last several years of her experience at CSU and in our mentor's lab. And from my perspective, just starting the PhD process, it was super inspiring to see all of those things come together and to see her hard work presented in such a beautiful way. She is a great storyteller and a great presentation giver, and I could not be more proud. So I'm excited that I get to celebrate with her today. We're meeting up after I film this, actually. And yeah, that was like the highlight of my week, was seeing her. It's a little bittersweet because I know that come spring semester, I'm going to be mostly the only grad student in my lab, which is a little bit scary. And I think it's only scary because of the pressure that I am putting onto myself. And I know that I've talked about this before, but I definitely have a tendency to project my own expectations of myself. And it's not that it's a projection negatively. It's just that I am visibly more anxious because in my head, I've created this story of you have to get this done at this time, or if you don't do anything in the lab for a couple of days, you're not as productive. And there's not really like a clear metric on what that looks like and what that means, because I'm the only one who is giving myself that expectation. So when it comes to being the only grad student in a lab and the rest of the people there are my mentor and a couple of undergrads, it's this weird space where I feel like I have to be doing more, even though that was not an expectation that was verbally explained to me. So I'm still battling with that a little bit as I go into week 7, not because I'm the only grad student right now, but because I am taking responsibility for mentorship a lot sooner than I thought I was going to. And that's mostly my choice. But I also want to keep the undergrads that are in my lab involved, because as a former undergrad, I see so much value in the research process starting at that level, because you get to ask questions that you wouldn't normally in class, and it gives you context to things that you may not have context for otherwise, especially in the academic setting. And I'm an advocate for anyone having curiosity to go for it. And I see that in the undergrads that are coming into my lab, and I don't want to lose them. And I know that my mentor doesn't want to lose them. So I've been trying to kick it up a notch with my own lab participation, not only to be a good example, but also to give them something to ask questions about, because you don't know what you don't know until you hear something that piques your interest. And that's kind of what sparked the whole research process for me personally. So with that said, my plans for this week are to finish another nutrition homework assignment. I think I have another stats one, but I haven't checked the Canvas portal yet, and I'm not going to until tomorrow because that's like a later me issue. But I have a couple more quizzes in my nutrition class, and then the rest of the week I'm going to dedicate to getting my crap together and write up a protocol for these pH adjustments that I have to do for one of my aims on my projects. So I know I haven't talked a lot about my project, mainly because I don't really have like a full grasp on the entire project as a whole. But I do know that there's several components that I will be personally responsible for, because this is a collaborative project across 3 labs and there's 3 grad students, including myself. And one of our collaborators is at CSU, but she is doing more of like an agricultural aspect. And I think it's like a chemistry lab. And then the other one is offsite at a different institution. So the aspects of my project that are my responsibility include culturing cells in a transwell system and analyzing the pH of our bread samples and doing what's called an in vitro digestion using InfoGest. And it's basically to mimic human digestion using enzymes that you would see in your body. And we're basically having to adjust the pH to a desired level. And that includes like the pH of the bread sample itself, but it also includes the time frame and the volume of liquid that will get the pH of that bread sample from its starting point to a desired pH of 3, which is present in your stomach, basically. So I'm going to be doing that this week, and I'm excited, but also nervous. And my mentor reassured me today that I was absolutely overthinking this and that I just need to get in the lab and start doing it. So that is my plan for Friday. I'm doing that with an undergrad. And hopefully we can figure out a solid protocol. And that's been like one of my main focuses. Since I'm not really doing lab work right now, my focus has been reading my grant, both of them, and then reading my articles that I need to read, both ones that were assigned to me and also ones that I find myself when I start to ask more questions. And I think all of this was very overwhelming the first couple of weeks of class and the start of my program in general. There were also some like uncontrollable, unforeseen changes that happened like the first 2 weeks of class. And it was just like a lot all at one time. So I felt really bad that I couldn't formulate questions with how much I didn't know and how much information was coming in. And there's still aspects of that I feel, especially when I'm sitting through like my immunology class or when I'm sitting through nutrition and my professor is talking about this lipase. And I'm like, when did you say that word? Because today it sounds like a foreign object. So there's been a lot of minimal moments of that. And I've been a lot better this week of like catching myself when I'm starting to doubt my understanding, because it's not fair to expect that I would have an understanding of anything hearing it for the first time. And that was something that I was reminded about today in my lab meeting when my mentor was telling me like, it's a pH adjustment. It's really simple. And then I asked her, is this pH adjustment experiment literally just starting with the suggested materials in this protocol and testing the pH over time to see how it changes and how long it takes to get to 3? And she was like, yeah. And I said, oh my God. And I shook my head and I was like, this perfectly describes everything that I've been feeling and how I've been reacting to things since I started my program. So that's been really funny to reflect on today. And it gives me hope in a weird way, because I think I'm getting a lot more settled in. I'm feeling more relaxed. And I'm feeling like I will have the tools eventually, and it's okay to not have all of them right now. And I think this is a really beautiful place to be in, because I didn't feel like I was going to get to this place 3 weeks ago, or at the start of my program, or even the start of my exams last week. I'm telling you guys, the roller coaster of stress and emotions is unlike anything else I have ever experienced. And I know that I'm not the only PhD person who's feeling this way. This is a perfect segue. I have a friend that I've made on Instagram, and his name is Sean. Shout out. And him and I have been communicating back and forth because he is also in the beginning stages of his PhD program. And we both have different backgrounds and we both have different emphases on what we're studying. But the feelings that we are having in this early stage of the process is wildly similar. And so him and I have been going back and forth, reassuring each other that it's going to be okay and talking about everything as it's happening. And it's been really cool. And I say this as a perfect segue because he is actually going to be my podcast guest 2 episodes from now. So you have this episode and you have one more episode, and then him and I will be chatting together, and it's going to be my first podcast guest, and I'm so excited. So I hope that you all are following me on Instagram at the Leafy Lentil, because I'm going to be publishing a question box several days leading up to this so that we can start to generate some questions to ask each other and to answer, because him and I are having different experiences because our programs are structured differently. And I don't want to give away too much information because I want to have plenty to talk about with him. But just keep that in mind. I'm going to put out several Instagram posts, like I said, and I'm also going to post on the community tab here because I think that's an underutilized tool for myself personally. And I just want to get the word out that I'm chatting about PhD stuff and life stuff. And if any of this was relatable to anyone, that's my whole goal, is to reassure myself, but also other people who are going through some really hard things, that you're not alone. And I think that's where I'm going to wrap up today. I know it's a short one, but I will definitely have more to say this coming Sunday. I have a feeling this week is going to be packed full of activities, just like every other week has. And I'm going to try my best not to avoid any more responsibility, because that just leads to a more stressed Chelsea later on in the week. I think I will be filming one more podcast before my friend Kate comes into town from the Bay Area. Kate, I'm so excited for you to come here. There's just a lot more exciting things that are happening now that I'm past the first several weeks. So we have this episode coming out today. We have my friend Kate coming into town next week. And then we have a guest on my podcast for the first time ever the week after that. As always, if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments or let me know on Instagram. I'm on there more than I'm on YouTube, so that makes sense to contact me there. And I will see you next week. Have a great day.